The quorum be dispensed with.
Without objection, further proceedings under the quorum call are dispensed with.
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr. President. Are we still in morning business?
The senator is correct. Period for morning business extends until 10:30.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that I be able to proceed for 12 minutes under morning business.
Without objection, the senator is recognized for up to 12 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, I rise today to address a topic that I think is as important to the future of U.S. and world security interest as any that I've spoken to, but we seem not to want to speak to it very much over the last 10 years and clearly over the last 2 months. Mr. President, I rise today to address the topic of Chinese weapons proliferation, a subject that I'm sorry to say we may be returning to again and again in the days and weeks ahead. If true, recent press reports of Chinese involvement in the proliferation of medium-range ballistic missiles to Syria and Pakistan and nuclear weapons technology to Algeria open a very new chapter in the Chinese flaunting of international norms of behavior, in my opinion. It appears that China is reportedly becoming a rogue elephant among the community of nations. Last year, Mr. President, when the Bush administration was defending its policy granting China most favored nation trade status, so-called FMN, we heard a great deal from the President and from the administration spokespersons about the positive effect of maintaining our relationship with the present Chinese leadership. And this is the presiding officer knows as well or better than anyone. I believe he was there. He went over, or at least he was in Southeast Asia, and I believe he was in China also. He knows better than anyone, relates to the aftermath of the dispute of the so-called, not so-called, the event in Tiananmen Square and what our response should and should not be. And the administration was up to more progress occur to help do that, one of many, and weapons of mass destruction. We were specifically told that. This was one of the examples given to us as to why we should keep these ties, why we should not engage in any activity designed is that we're going to lose our ties in Beijing and with Beijing and ballistic missiles and weapons of mass destruction. Now, the Chinese are on record as saying that they would not sell a particular class of intermediate-range missiles, the M9, to Syria, end of quote. We're also told, and I quote, "We have no indications that the Chinese have ever delivered intermediate-range missiles beyond those previously sold to Saudi Arabia or the M9 to anyone," end of quote. And finally, Assistant Secretary of State Solomon, these kinds of weapons to unstable areas in the Middle East, and we will hold them to that public pledge, end of quote. These pledges appear to have been worthless. If, in fact, as reported, they have been breached by the Chinese. If the Chinese have broken their pledge, my concern now is whether the administration will attempt to hold them to the pledge that they made and do another. One day we were told that the Chinese are prepared to live by, quote, international guidelines, end of quote, Syria, and apology, and that such exports will be subject to international inspections in producing nuclear weapons technology. This is not to say that the Bush administration is failing with the Chinese leadership. China's foreign minister said and assume corresponding obligation. Apparently the Chinese do not feel bound to live by or live up missiles. And the most compelling argument made to the American people, turning around their attitude about whether or not we have capability to the Pakistanis and Syrians. Now, can anyone in this room fathom what the outcome in term, not in the ultimate victory, had ballistic missiles, had he had But in a different world, selling just that very capability again and again and again. Second coming to look at whether or not Mr. Assad is likely to see the second coming. Saddam Hussein. And yet, according to the press, the Chinese are proceeding to help another Mideast dictator build another deadly arsenal. Suppliers cartel. If the key nations are willing to participate, and that is a very big if, I might add, Mr. President, then no matter what the legislation that I make to see to it that such a cartel comes into being. On a trip to China, he said that if skeptics say that the Chinese have made a firm decision suppliers cartel. Last year, the Chinese had a trade surplus with the United States of more than $10 billion. If not the active operation, we should be prepared to retaliate Hussein to the extent that he was. They're told, no, we can work this out. Well, I've seen nothing to indicate the likelihood of the Chinese changing their attitude, short of some reason to change their attitude, supplied by us and other Western countries. Mr. President,